The Iowa women go on the road and pick up another quad one victory, an impactful one, and maybe one of the more complete performances of the year. We talk about that, plus the Hawkeyes in the NFL Draft Combine with Scott Dochterman, all today, Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Well, we got a busy show for you here today and a little bit of everything. We're going to be talking football and NFL Combine with Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Also, going to get his thoughts and his perspective on Liddell Betts leaving for the NFL. We'll talk NFL and Iowa football coming up here with Scott Dochterman in just a little bit, plus his thoughts on some Iowa basketball topics. But not only that, we got you covered on the basketball front. An important victory for the women. We will break that one down. And also, I look forward to Friday, the men. And it's not a must-win situation. At minimum, the Iowa men, to extend their season, I believe they have to win at least one more game. And it doesn't matter which of these three it comes from, but you can't go over 0 for 3, or this season's going to be done for the Hawkeyes. We're going to talk about that as well. But we kick things off from what we saw. Iowa against Michigan. Hawkeyes race out to an early lead against the Wolverines. And one thing that we talked about leading into the game yesterday for the Hawkeye women is that this is a Michigan team that was in a very similar spot to Iowa. You look at the net rankings, you look at Big Ten standings, you just look at kind of overall quality of resume. These two teams were incredibly tight. Now, the likelihood that Iowa's going to be able to track them down, we'll see on that front, because tiebreakers are going to be crazy. There's still a very good likelihood, even if Iowa does what they're supposed to on Sunday against Wisconsin, that they're still going to be playing in the opening round of the Big Ten tournament and having to win 5 games in 5 days to cut down the nets and win another Big Ten championship and make it 4 in a row. But this is a Michigan team that not only had a very similar resume to Iowa, this is a team that was playing incredibly well. They came into the game last night. They had won 5 of their last 6, and it wasn't just that they had won 5 out of 6. They were beating some solid teams. Wins against Oregon, Nebraska, Michigan State, Indiana. These are all really solid teams, all of them NCAA tournament teams. But it wasn't that they were just beating them. They were throttling them. They beat Oregon by 32. They beat Michigan State by 10. They beat Nebraska by 18. This was a Wolverine team that came in playing incredibly well, and the Iowa women just absolutely took it to them. Early on, it was Sydney Affolter, and it was so great to see that performance from Affolter, because she's struggled coming into the year, coming off that knee surgery. And we saw she just wasn't herself. Sydney Affolter is not a player that you look at that's going to be, your typical 20-point scorer. That's not where she is. What she is, Southside tough, an incredible rebounder, especially for her size at 5'11", maybe. She is tough, tenacious, can guard a bunch of different positions, can guard inside, can guard outside. Her athleticism is her strength, and with a knee injury, well, didn't have as much practice time. You wonder how this year could have gone if it would have been healthy all the way through and didn't have that surgery, but we'll never know that. To see her put together that kind of performance, 35 minutes of the game, she goes 9 of 12 from the floor, 4 of 4 from the three-point line, and that was another area that she was really struggling earlier this season. And, of course, another double-double with 11 rebounds to go along with it. 24 and 11. With Sydney Affolter, a lot of times it's 7 points, 12 rebounds, right? Those kind of games that you get from her. But her ability to knock down those shots, and it was not just that she was knocking down the shots. What I'd love to see from her, especially in that first quarter when she had, 14 of those points, was she was aggressive. It wasn't just hitting the open shot. That's always been part of the repertoire for Sydney Affolter. It was always open shot, knock it down, right? But she was being aggressive. There was somebody closing out on her, but she was hot. I'm going to fire it up. And then she started going to the hole a little bit more. And you saw a couple of times she was able to get a step on the defender because what she was doing with the three-point shooting. Look, if you get this kind of offense, and of course, you can never expect a player to go 4 for 4 game in and game out from the three-point line, but if you get an aggressive, a solid offensive showing from Sydney Affolter every single time, you're going to be in good shape. McCabe did her thing, knocked down a couple of three-pointers in the game. Lucy Olson then, after the attention started to go to Affolter, they jumped on her, and she was hot. And boy, Lucy Olson, talk about the three-point shooting that we've seen from her this season. When she committed it coming in from Villanova, we were told very quickly, this is going to be a different type of player than what we were used to with Caitlin Clark, and obviously it's going to be, and I think we all understood it. But it was more than anything, you hear one of the top scorers in the country and a guard and a point guard at that, you think, well, she's going to be handling the ball a ton, that she was going to be a player that you were going to see that had a three-point that was not Lucy Olson. She was never known as a great three-point shooter. And then you look at what she's been able to do this season, what she's been able to put together at the three-point, shooting 35% from behind the arc. I mean, that's big time. 42 three-pointers on the year, and that was not always the case for her throughout the course of the year. That is something that is definitely taken a big step forward, and they definitely need that. Couple other players to mention. We're going to talk about the resume of this women's team because more than anything, the importance in my mind for them to get up to that number 6 seed line in the NCAA tournament. I think it's incredibly impactful and a chance for this team to make a run. Hannah Stuelke, a little inconsistent at times in this one. Stuelke, though, got to the free throw line 5 out of 6. Love to see that. We know that's been up and down. The continued play of Kylie Feuerbach, though, on the defensive end of the floor. Had a couple of runouts. Really nice up and under move coming to the right side of the rim to finish in the second half of the game. But it feels like the light bulb has come on for Feuerbach and what she's done. And then we got to see the youngsters out there a little bit more. 11 minutes out of Guyton, 6 minutes out of Hayden. Hadn't seen her a ton lately, able to get a little bit of run. Saw Taylor Stremlow and Mulaney both in there a little bit as well. So still working those freshmen in, getting them minutes on the road in the Big Ten, because that is part of the future of this basketball program. But we will go to Senior Day, and it will be a chance to honor Lucy Olson, her 1 year here, but the other seniors. And going to be, I think, quite a scene in Carver, Wisconsin team that is not very good. Looking at the projections, as Iowa's going to be projected to be a really big favorite in that game against the Badgers. Let me bring it back up here. At 21 is where the analytical website barttorvik.com has that. Iowa favored by 21. That shows you this one should be a laugher. Iowa should finish the season at 20-9, 10-8 in the Big Ten, and a resume that points to potentially working their way up to become a number 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. Now, you start with beating Wisconsin, number 1. If it plays out like I projected, Iowa opens up as the number 10 seed in the Big Ten tournament against 15th seeded Penn State. Then they would take on Michigan State. In my projections, Sparty would be the number 7 seed. Michigan State, there's a little payback there, as Iowa let one slip away back in the middle of December. That was one of those games, the early conference games, if you will. Really should have put that one away. I think they're kicking themselves about that one. Michigan State came back and got the victory. Iowa can win that game, and that would be another quad 1 victory for them. So speaking of that, here's the resume for Iowa as it currently sits. They have 6 road victories, 4 neutral court victories. They are number 26 in the net rankings. Their non-conference strength of schedule is 24. Their overall strength of schedule is 7th in the country. They are 5-6 against quad 1, have that elite level win against USC. Overall, quads 1 and 2, when you put them together, they are 8-9. And when you look at other teams in the same kind of level, Charlie Crean, the bracketologist at ESPN, before we went into the game against Michigan, had Iowa on the 7 line, Michigan on the 6. You look at Iowa's resume against Michigan, they're very close, basically a toss-up, and Iowa beat them in Michigan. If we're looking at deciding factors and resumes that are that tight, that should definitely play out. You look at other number 6 seeds, West Virginia, Louisville, programs like that. It's really good. And here's one other thing. And one thing I've been looking for, and I'm going to dig in a little bit more on this front. We know that the analytical part of things is being looked at by the NCAA men's committee. So I've been talking a lot this season about Bart Torvik, who is, much like Ken Pomeroy on the men's side, he's an analytic-based guy. Puts in the numbers and it spits out what offensive efficiency is, defensive efficiency. It is a projection-based metric that projects forward. It is predictive. Not just what you've done, predicts what they believe, what the computer believes would happen going forward. Bart Torvik's advanced metrics has Iowa ranked as the 21st ranked team in the country. Got to do a little more digging and see if analytics, how much bigger they are on the women's side of things. Definitely know that is something that has come in and been part of the team sheets on the women's side. We will certainly keep an eye on that one, but the Iowa resume gets better and a chance to build on it. Get the win against Wisconsin, win a couple in the Big Ten tournament. Heck, let's get hot. Let's see what happens on that front. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Time for some Iowa football talk with Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. He is in Indianapolis at the NFL Draft Combine. We'll get his perspective and his thoughts on what he is seeing with the local guys that are involved over there. We'll talk to him a little bit about that and a whole lot more as we talk with Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. When we come back, this is Locked On Hawkeyes. All right, Hawkeye fans, the future of college athletics is here, and it's transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happen under the table, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes that they love. Now with Roy, you get to be a part of the change and support Hawkeye athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much to contribute, receive exclusive content from the athletes you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app is giving fans control. No more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app now and use the App Store and start backing Hawkeye athletes the way that they deserve, with transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Welcome back to the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Trent Condon with you as we talk the world of Hawkeye athletics. Had an opportunity to talk with Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. A look at Iowa at the NFL Draft Combine right now.
Indianapolis. The combine goes on. Scott Dochterman is there covering it for The Athletic, and he joins us. Doc, Trent, and Ken, how are you?
I am well, guys. How's Des Moines doing today?
Beautiful. Loving the weather. Really like late February sign for this each and every year. Did you get to St. Elmo's yet? The famous steakhouse with more famous shrimp cocktail sauce. Have you been?
Not yet. No, it's I was pretty busy yesterday. I got there Monday night after stopping in Champaign and talking to Brett Bielema for a little while. But
Nice.
No, I haven't made it there. Hopefully I will sometime this week.
So is it still as popular, Doc, when you look around? It really escalated and ballooned as far as attendance, media, eyeballs covering this event. Is it as popular as it was? I know that there's actually some teams that aren't going anymore that are, taking part via Zoom. Is it still as big as it once was?
Yeah, it is. I think it's different than it has been in the past. I mean, I would say from a media perspective, there's just as many people here as there normally is as far as the teams go. Some staffers some don't think they get enough out of it, and I can understand that if you're looking at it from the workouts. I think it's kind of short-sighted when you talk about like the interview process, because you get all these opportunities to meet with prospects. I don't know why, if you're a head coach or a general manager, you wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But for the on-field workouts, I mean, you can see it on television these days and see what the numbers are, and so I can get it from that point of view.
So, question for you, Doc. I heard you last week talking about Nick Jackson not getting invited to the combine, and there has to be a certain amount of teams that want you there. How does that kind of process work in order to get that invite to the combine?
Yeah, it was mainly related to Mason Richmond. And,
Oh, okay.
18 players or 18 teams have to recommend each prospect to come to the combine. And I think in Mason's case, there were 16 teams. So he wasn't able to get an invite, which is kind of wild when you think about it. Somebody could accidentally leave you off, or they put on 300 names and whatever. So, I mean, you look at it from different points of view, it's at least 18 teams think enough of you that you should be here. So that's pretty good for the players who are here. And, in Mason's case in particular, he's not here, but he'll have a good pro day, I'm sure. And there'll be teams there that will meet with him. But it's kind of like a status symbol. It's kind of like if you get drafted versus undrafted, you're always going to be a draft pick, even though you may have a better situation if you're not. So, in Mason's case, he may actually build him more of an interest base in Iowa City during their pro day, because other teams haven't met with him face to face. And, so you hope for the best for those players. And there's others at every school. They're like that.
Nick Jackson's running mate, Jay Higgins, met the media this morning. You were there for that. What's kind of the buzz around him, Doc? And what did Higgins have to say, in particular, when asked about his time at Iowa? And then kind of what are you hearing about him round wise, if anything?
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's, the buzz around Jay is always good because he's as energetic of a person as you'll ever meet, but also just his football acumen. And today he did a really nice job of outlining his responsibilities at Iowa, what he saw. I mean, he's teaching calculus to us media folk in Indianapolis when it comes to, what he's looking at pre-snap, what he's trying to define. And then, some of the things he said at Iowa, it was kind of funny, that, somebody asked, what's in the water at Iowa? And he's like, hard work's in the water, and we're different than everybody else. And we think of things that way. And then kind of took a shot at, some people when it came to like the 24/7 and rankings and rivals. He's like, we don't necessarily go after everybody who's that high on rivals, and we value our own picks. Somebody's like, hey, I work for rivals or whatever, and he's like, you guys didn't have me very high, but some of the guys you had me higher, or I'm paraphrasing here, but that you had higher than me aren't here, and I am. So I think that was pretty funny that Jay popped that out.
Didn't forget. And a lot of those guys don't forget where they were in the rankings, and they won't forget where they go, certainly on draft day. A guy with the Iowa background, obviously, that's going to have, I think, interesting conversations is Jamari Harris. The decision to opt out the last couple of games. He was involved in the sports gambling suit and sat out a couple of games. He had an OWI. There's a lot of demerits, a lot of marks on that resume. Now, ultimately, in the NFL, if you can play,
you play?
You're a decent dude. You're going to find a home. What's this week going to be like for Jamari Harris?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of interest from teams asking those questions, because there are different camps. And I spent yesterday talking to some general managers, not about him specifically because it wouldn't answer anything like that, but in general, about players, say, opting out of their regular season, which is a little bit different phenomenon than the bowls, which is a normal occurrence these days. And I got most of the views were we take it case by case. Yeah. And then there was another one who said, look, I'm not going to judge anybody if they think that this is the best decision for their family. But really what was unsaid was, we're going to ask, because it's going to depend on how comfortable they are. I mean, do they feel like, and again, if you're injured and you're out there in your you got a situation that you just don't feel like you could play your best, and you hurt your opportunities, then they can maybe understand that. If they don't feel that way, then they won't. And I think there's going to be probably a sharp divide ultimately among the NFL teams, where you're going to see some teams say, he's off our board. We just don't want that kind of a player. He quit on his team in the middle of the season. And then there's other players, teams that are going to say, we kind of understand the circumstances here, and we decide, and we're about if you can play or not. And we feel comfortable with what his explanation was, and move on. And ultimately, you just need one team to believe in you. And I think you find that because his performance shows that. And he's a pretty high character despite some of the past flaws. So, but it will be fascinating to see that unfold. And I don't know how much of that he'll share with me or later on, but it is a fascinating topic, no question.
No doubt about it. Doc, quarterbacks, a lot of them are opting out, at least of the working out of throwing. I mean, I don't know who's going to. I know Quinn Ewers is going to. He's there. What about that? Obviously, last year, I don't think Drake May threw. Caleb Williams didn't throw. I don't think any of the of the big names top. How many went in the top 12? Was it 6 or 5? Anyways, most of them did not participate. How are teams viewing that, Doc? Are they just going to wait for the pro days?
Yeah, if that even. Yeah, I mean it's become such a common occurrence. I didn't even know that it's a big deal anymore. I mean, if somebody actually opts in to throw, it's kind of a big deal because they're throwing to receivers who they've never thrown to. They have different levels, that run routes differently. They have no chemistry with them, and you throw a couple of incompletions, and then the basement draftniks start chirping about, oh, look at him, he can't do this, right? And
stock really fell.
Yeah, exactly. And you just get all this negative rhetoric, and it's like, well, why do that? Why not go to your home environment?
Yeah.
Receivers, throw to them. I went to Brock Purdy's throwing session a couple of years ago, and it was really good. And I think he was like 52 of 55, and he showed a little bit better depth in his routes, and there were a lot of scouts there, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, if you're a mid-round prospect, this is a time to gamble on yourself, and whether it's Quinette Ewers, who was injured throughout the season, other quarterbacks that want to show that they can do it, and it just adds to it allows them to get a better opportunity. But then the other ones who are in that upper category, there's really nothing to gain, because if they're perfect on all their passes at the combine, it's not going to mean, oh, he's definitely going number one overall. It's just neat for everybody to watch on TV.
Another guy I had a thought from the Iowa State perspective, Darian Porter, a 6'4" receiver. When he goes over there, doesn't get an Iowa offer. He goes to Iowa State from Bettendorf. Don't see that happen a whole lot. He goes, not a wide receiver. They move him to corner, and I thought, well, this guy's career's over. He'll be a special teamer, and that's it, because you don't see 6'4" quarterbacks. Yet here he is, a late bloomer. He's got speed. He's got size. What's going to be the buzz about Darian Porter?
Yeah, how he tests will impact how he goes. I mean, a story that I'm writing, or I just finished that I'm writing, is just kind of about the CFP teams like Ohio State and Notre Dame, and the players not getting much of an opportunity to participate in training and rest and recovery and all of that. Well, when you look at Darian Porter, he got all that opportunity, and that's really helpful for him. And I think that what he does on the field drills, where the Ohio State and Notre Dame guys won't get really judged by that if they do participate, but he will. And I think being that long, that lengthy, and being able to do so many things that he can do, if he can show that he's got good agility and quickness and speed, that's really going to benefit him in the long run, because he is such a long arm guy. And then there are teams that have absolute standards when it comes to how they determine, a cornerback. Like, they want X number of arm length or height. They don't want somebody for an outside corner position who's 5'11" with 32-inch arms. So he can really put himself in a really good position with a good workout. But even if he doesn't, I don't think that strips him off boards. It's just kind of but he's got a chance to really rise as a participant here.
Yeah, I've seen first round mocks with him. I mean, I think that's a stretch, but certainly second day potential. Doc, Liddell Betts, obviously you covered him as a player, and then he goes to the NFL, comes back to Iowa. Everybody we talked to, Doc, says this is a blow, especially where we are the calendar wise, what he meant recruiting wise, how he was able to hold that running back room together with only a certain number of carries to go around. How big of a blow is Liddell Betts leaving the Ferentz's staff?
Well, he's a legitimate pro coach. I mean, he was one of the better position coaches, and it's pretty obvious from his recruiting acumen that Iowa completely benefited from him. I mean, he went and got their top two running backs next year, Jazz Patterson and Kamari Moltner, both Florida guys that he went and got. Caleb Johnson, he was able to bring him in the fold. He was the first guy he recruited, lost him to Cal, then brought him back, and of course Caleb, there is serious buzz here for him. It's off the charts. I mean, I asked 3 or 4, I know this is a different topic, but 3 or 4 Big Ten linebackers today who's the best running back, and they all said Caleb Johnson, and that's in the league with some elite backs. So, pretty big stuff there. But Liddell is he replaceable? Yeah, but are you going to find a better one? I don't know. I mean, he did a really good job, and I can see why the NFL wants him. I mean, to be able to put everybody together, and how he coached Caleb Johnson from being a talented guy to being a first-team All-American is because of what he was able to do with him and how he was able to train him. And it took time, to get him to do some things well, which was go from, to finishing runs with a blow on the defender to getting his pads down. I mean, that took a lot of time and work and effort. And Liddell, with the respect that he built, I mean, that was significant. So this is not a minor loss for Iowa by any stretch. It's not just a possession coach. I mean, but is it the worst guy to lose? I'm not going to go there. I just think he's going to be a quality running backs coach in the NFL.
That is Scott Dochterman from The Athletic as we take a look at some Hawkeye football topics with Doc today. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Did you get your tickets to see Caitlin Clark? If you didn't, well, it's going to cost you. Next, we talk some hoops and a must-win in Carver. That's all coming up on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Fabric by Gerber Life. Life comes at you fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online, right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required, giving you peace of mind. Look, I'm a parent. I got my youngsters. In fact, I remember sitting there, had a little guy in there with a cough one day. You just want to have that peace of mind. Being in the hospital, it made me go right there. And a place like Fabric absolutely gives me the peace of mind. Plus affordable coverage. You can get $1 million in coverage and less than $1 a day. So protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Fabric by Gerber Life. Big thank you to them for being with us on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. We continue here in a moment and a look at Caitlin Clark coming back to Carver. Trent Conner back with you one final time. Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. All right, wrapping things up here, and big win for the women. We know Caitlin's coming back to Carver, and it's already sold out. I told you yesterday about the ability to get tickets. Hey, maybe you can jump aboard, get some tickets this way or that way. Well, before they get to the general public, they're gone. If you're a season ticket holder, you got first dibs at that one. Congratulations to you. If you're able to get that 4-pack, have some friends that I know jumped aboard with that one. Just absolutely incredible. I mean, the thing sells out in less than an hour. You wonder, should they just put this thing in Kinnick like they did the crossover to Kinnick? And it would have been a huge number. There probably would have been 60,000 fans that were there in May to watch that one. Their Indiana Fever, they've already had to move a couple of games. A couple of the road games have been moved against the Mystics in Washington, been moved to a bigger arena in Baltimore. It's on and on and on. It continues. It's great. It's going to be awesome. So excited to have her back. That ticket is going to be absolutely ridiculous. In fact, that was one thing I was going to take a peek at here is see already, because we are just a little bit after the sellout was announced. So what are these Indiana Fever games going to go for on the open market? I am going to anticipate this thing is going to be a monster of a ticket. All right, Indiana Fever events. Let's find it here against the Brazilian national team. There it goes, pops right up. There's 20 listings right now, including fees. Get in price. That's the cheapest. Yeah, that's the cheapest. Get in price, $739 for one. $739. Okay. Get out the wallets. Get out the checkbooks. Get out the credit cards. It's going to be a pricey one if you didn't get in. There's some gouging going on. It'll likely go down as we get closer. But, boy, absolutely incredible. Sunday, May 4th, Caitlin makes her return to Carver-Hawkeye Arena. I mentioned a must-win. And it's a must-win, I think, for the Iowa women. When we're talking about the seeding coming up on Sunday against Wisconsin, the Iowa men, we're going to talk about that more tomorrow. Their matchup against Northwestern, just a huge, huge opportunity for them. And an opportunity for them to go out really improve their opportunity to get in the Big Ten tournament. There was some conversation earlier this morning with Fran McCaffrey in his press conference before the Northwestern game. Drew Thelwell is going to be available. There's a little storyline for you, but I was asked about the 18 teams, the 3 teams that don't make the Big Ten tournament. And there's a Penn State coach that I'd mentioned after their game didn't like it. I'm the same way. I guess maybe it does add a little intrigue at the end, but one thing that's great about college basketball, one thing that I love about college hoops is that everybody can play their way in. Outside of the Ivy League that only 4 teams qualify for their conference tournament, everybody else that's eligible for the NCAA tournament, you can play your way in. You have one final shot to get there, except in the Big Ten, because the league has grown so big that they haven't been able to do it. Is there a perfect way? No. Take a look at the Sun Belt bracket, by the way, and see the way that they've configured this thing to make it easier for the top teams. I think it's 6, maybe 7 games that the bottom teams in the conference have to win the bid. That's fine. We saw it last year. NC State won 5 games in 5 days to win the ACC, secure the automatic bid. They went on to the Final Four. Give everybody the shot. And if you're one of those lower teams, it's going to be a much more difficult path. I get that. But if you finish in the bottom half of your league, an 18-team league, after 20 games, your path should be more difficult. I think they're onto something there. We'll talk about that a little bit more coming up here as we get ready for the Big Ten tournament. Back with you tomorrow. We'll have Tom Kakert from Hawkeye Report set to join us and get ready for Iowa Northwestern on the hardwood. Set the scene for the weekend and a whole lot more. I'm Trent Condon, and I'm with you each and every weekday talking the world of Hawkeye athletics. You can join us. Hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Just takes you a second. Really does help us out. If you're on the podcast side, 5-star reviews helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.